A very pleasant morning to all of you, and we are back to a new week and one more session, live session with Neetu's Academy. This is Anne with you, and we are going to discuss today a listening module related questions. Being on Tuesday, we normally do a listening Acuity live, right? So today also we are going to deal with a few questions connected to listening module, which we do normally. But before getting to that questions today, I'll just give you a brush up of the listening module in a brief manner. Maybe somebody is joining for the first time, or maybe anybody who's going to watch this video later for the first time for them. Now, listening module is the same for both general and academic candidates. There's no difference in that because the content is the same for both general and academic. The total test is for 30 minutes. If somebody is going for a paper test, they will get a 10 minutes extra time to transfer the answers into the answer sheet. For computer-based people who are going for CBT, they will get only 2 minutes. That is for reviewing your answers. That is for not for transferring your answers, for reviewing your answers. So if you're going for a computer-based test, make sure that when you listen to the audio, at the same time, you are filling up the blanks which are mentioned for the answers, right? For paper test, you'll get a 10 minutes extra to transfer the same, right? Now, listening module is divided, the 30-minute test is divided into 4 sections, 10 questions each. That means total 40 questions, right? So each question, each correct answer will give you 1 mark. The raw marks is again converted into a band, right? That is how the marking system is. Now these 40 questions which is given to you, total 10 for each section, like with the progress of the section, the difficulty of the questions keeps on increasing, right? That doesn't mean you cannot solve it, nothing like that. If with rigorous practice, listening can also be achieved and good band can be achieved for listening. Section 1 is generally a conversation. The section 1 and section 2 is based on general context. Section 3 and section 4 is based on academic context, right? So section 1 is a conversation. It can be a conversation between maybe normally a conversation which happens between a customer service agent and a customer, or maybe a movers company and a customer, or maybe you're calling someone for a complaint, or maybe you're inquiring something. It's generally like that. The second section deals with the monologue, right? Again, that means a person is telling you something, giving you some information about something, right? And the questions are based on that audio. The third section again is a conversation which is based on academic context. So it can be like maybe some students are discussing some project, or a professor and a group of students. Now this is between not more than 2 people and less than 4 people, right? Between 2 and 4 people are having some conversation based on some academic context. Section 4 is again a monologue, which is generally maybe a speech given by some maybe some professor or some academic connected somebody, or maybe somebody is welcoming a group of students into a college or a university. So these are the a type of content or conversation. Now the audio cannot be paused, the audio cannot be replayed. That is something you have to take care of. The audios are generally of different kinds of accent. It can be US Canadian, Australian, or any other accented audio. So that's why we always say when you practice your listening module, take different types of audio so that you get aware of it, because their pronunciation, their accents differ, the pronunciations differ, the sound of some alphabets do differ. So you should be aware of those things, right? Now listening generally has got around 10 to 12 type of questions, right? Different type of questions. Very common question is multiple choice questions, single answer or multiple choice, right? It can be either of them. You have got summary completions, you have got note completions, you have got sentence completion, you have got map labeling, plan labeling, and so on, right? So when you practice, take various kinds of questions and practice them accordingly, so that you will come to know that, because every specific question has to be approached in a different manner. So you'll come to know how to solve it in a particular way when you go to the actual test. So this is something about the listening module which you should take care of. Many a times it is lot of times it is underrated when it comes to in terms of practice. It is kindly ignored. It is not practiced as much as we do the speaking or the writing, or maybe the reading to an extent. But then you should never go to the test blank. Similarly, you should never go to the audio blank, right? You should have you should focus on the audio definitely when you're listening to it. However, before the audio starts, you get a couple of seconds, right, maybe 20-25 seconds to check the questions. At that 20-30 seconds which you get, you have to utilize those time. You have to know you're answering what type of question. You should know what does the particular question answer can be. Synonyms here also play a very big role. So you can mark keywords which can be available or which may be available in the audio when you listen to it, right? So all these things have to be taken care of. So this is the basic about listening. So generally what we do is that every Tuesday we take up around 10 questions, because we have got a time constraint. So we take 10 questions from any section 1, between section 1 and section 4, from any practice test, and we first listen to the audio piece. And once you listen to the audio piece, at that time the questions are played on your screen. You can answer the same time, and then once the audio is completed, we come back to the questions and discuss the same. Okay, so we are going to do the same today. So let's go to the audio clip, listen to it very clearly, and then after that come back with the audio with the questions. So the audio clip will be in a couple of seconds.
Part of a seminar in which a researcher called Grant Freeman discusses his work on Australian honeybees with a group of students. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Good morning, everyone. In today's seminar, Grant Freeman, a biologist who specialises in identifying insects and who works for the Australian Quarantine Service, has come to talk to us about his current research work. Right, well, over to you, Grant.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure that you know that the Quarantine Service regulates all food brought into Australia. Well, obviously they want to protect Australia from diseases that might come in with imported goods, but they also want to prevent insect pests from being introduced into the country, and that's where I have a part to play. Anyway, my current research involves trying to find a particular type of bee, the Asian honeybee, and finding out whether there are any of them around in various states of Australia. We discovered a few of them in Queensland once and eradicated them. Now we're pretty keen to make sure that there aren't any more getting in, particularly to New South Wales and other states.
What's wrong with Asian honeybees? Are they so different from Australian bees?
Well, in fact, they look almost the same, but they are infested with mites, microscopic creatures which live on them, and which can seriously damage our own homegrown bees, or could even wipe them out.
Well, what would happen if Australian bees died out?
Well, the honey from Australian bees is of excellent quality, much better than the stuff the Asian bees produce. In fact, Australia exports native queen bees to a large number of countries because of this. When the European honeybee was first discovered out in the bush, we found they made really unpleasant honey, and they were also too big to pollinate many of our native flowers here in Australia.
That must have had a devastating effect on the natural flora. Did you lose any species?
No, we managed to get them under control before that happened. But if Asian bees got in, there could be other consequences. We could lose a lot of money because, you might not be aware, but it's estimated that native bees' pollination of flower and vegetable crops is worth $1.2 billion a year. So in a way, they're the farmer's friend. Oh, and another thing is, if you're stung by an Asian honeybee, it can produce an allergic reaction in some people, so they're much more dangerous than native bees.
Before you hear the rest of the seminar, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
How will you know if Asian bees have entered Australia?
We're looking at the diet of the bird called the rainbow bee-eater. The bee-eater doesn't care what it eats as long as they're insects. But the interesting thing about this bird is that we are able to analyse exactly what it eats, and that's really helpful if we're looking for introduced insects.
How come?
Because insects have their skeletons outside their bodies, so the bee-eaters digest the meat from the inside. Then they bring up all the indigestible bits of skeleton, and of course the wings, in a pellet, a small ball of waste material which they cough up.
That sounds a bit unpleasant. So how do you go about it?
In the field, we track down the bee-eaters and find their favourite feeding spots, the places where the birds usually feed. It's here that we can find the pellets. We collect them up and take them back to the laboratory to examine the contents.
How do you do that?
The pellets are really hard, especially if they've been out in the sun for a few days. So, first of all, we treat them by adding water to moisten them and make them softer. Then we pull them apart under the microscope. Everything's all scrunched up, but we're looking for wings, so we just pull them all out and straighten them. Then we identify them to see if we can find any Asian bee wings.
And how many have you found?
So far, our research shows that Asian bees have not entered Australia in any number. It's a good result and much more reliable than trying to find live ones as evidence of introduced insects.
Well, that's fascinating. Thank you, Grant, for those insights. I hope that you might inspire some of our students here to conduct some similar experiments.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Okay, so that was the audio clip, right? Now what we are going to do is that there were 10 questions in that. The audio was taken from the audio is related to section 3. Okay, so section 3, which generally is a conversation which has happened, so and it's an academic contest, right? So the questions are from 21 to 30 and the questions are divided into two types. We have got questions 21 to 24, which is multiple choice question, single answer, and then we have 25 to 30, which is a summary completion question, right? That means there are 6 blanks which are there to be completed in the summary, right? So let's come to the beginning of the questions. Question number 21 to 24. Choose the correct letter A, B or C. Whenever you are attempting a listening module question, always pay attention to the instructions very carefully, and that is applicable to an extent reading also, because especially if the instructions are based on word count, right? So here it says okay, so the instruction says choose the correct letters A, B or C. So either it's A, either it's B or it's C, right? It's a single answer multiple choice question. So there is a title given for the question sets. It's honeybees in Australia, right? Okay, it says honeybees in Australia. We have got 21, 22, 23, 24. 4 questions aanulladu. Ella questions nu there are 3 options A, B, C, right? Idinathunnu edenu oru option aayirikkum ningade answer. Single answer aayadondu you have to choose only one. Similarly, multiple choice questions, multiple answers undu. When the question is given, they will specifically tell you choose more than one answers, right? Or more than one option, right? Now, first question is, where in Australia have Asian honeybees been found in the past? So now here, whenever you get a question, you have to look for the keyword, right? Because the keywords are something which is available in your audio. Maybe the same word will be there, or maybe something synonymous to that. So here the question is, we are looking for actually where in Australia. That means definitely the answer is going to be a name of a city, town, region, or maybe something else, but definitely it's going to be something connected to a place. So where in Australia have Asian honeybees? Now what we are looking for the existence of Asian honeybees in Australia, where they are found. So we are trying to find out where they are to be found in Australia. The options given are Queensland, New South Wales, and then several states. So you have to listen, Queensland and New South Wales, definitely it won't be paraphrased and given. It's a noun. We always say the best keywords are the nouns, numbers and terms and so on. So definitely you can hear Queensland, or maybe you can hear New South Wales, or maybe specifically they will say numerous states or several states or several regions, right? So let's go to the audio script. We already heard the audio. So here is the audio script. We will just go through it to get the correct answer. The audio starts with a greeting wherein the professor is telling, "Good morning everyone. In today's seminar, Grant Freeman, a biologist who specializes in identifying insects and who works for the Australian Quarantine Service, has come to talk to us about his current research work." Right? Well, over to you, Grant. Okay. Now here's something which Grant says. "Good morning everyone. I'm sure that you know that the Quarantine Service regulates all food brought into Australia. Well, obviously they want to protect Australia from diseases that might come in with the imported goods. But they also want to prevent insect pests from being introduced into the country. And that's where I have a part to play. Anyway, my current research involves trying to find a particular type of bee, the Asian honey bee. So now, the moment that name is mentioned, you should know that your answer is going to definitely come after that. The Asian honey bee, we are finding out where they are found, right? Asian honeybee, and finding out whether there are any of them around in various states of Australia. So we have an option, several states, but then here he is telling he is out on a mission to find out whether they are available in various states of Australia. We discovered a few of them in Queensland once and eradicated them. Now we are pretty keen to make sure that there aren't any more getting in, particularly to New South Wales and other states. So whatever the choices are given in your question, that is Queensland, New South Wales and various states, all the three are available in the audio clip when you listen to it, but there is a variation in the information. The beginning he says various states of Australia. He specifically mentions that we are on a mission to find out whether it's available or not. That means right now it is not there. And then he says we discovered a few. That means we found out a few of them in Queensland once. That means they are available in Queensland. And then he says and eradicated them. They were available and then he eradicated them, got rid of them, but they were there, found. Now we are pretty keen to make sure that there aren't any more getting in. So they are taking precautions that they won't come back again. Particularly to New South Wales and other states, right? So that means out of these three options, the bees were available or found first in Queensland. In other various states, they are making sure that checking whether it's available or not. And New South Wales, they are making sure that it won't get in there, right? So when you look at in that manner, when you listen to the audio in that manner, you can assure that the answer for the first question where they are found is Queensland, right? Even though the other options are also available in your audio. I think that would be enough for that to make sure it's Queensland, right? Second question. A problem with Asian honeybees is that now we are looking for some problem, some issue connected to them. They have some issue, maybe they have some complexity, they have some problem. What are they? Is that they attack, first option, they attack native bees. Second, carry parasites And third one is damaged crops. So 3 options are there which they have given. What the problem with Asian bees are? They cause a problem. First, either they attack the native bees, second they carry parasites, and third they damage the crops. So let's see. So here you can look at it's quite easy to understand because it's quite in a very simple language they have given what is the problem with the honeybees. So let's go to the audio script. We have read till South Wales and then goes student 1. Now the student 1 has got a question. What's wrong with Asian honeybees? Are they so different from Australian bees? So what's wrong? When something is wrong with something, that means it is a problem. Okay. So when somebody is not in a good mood, we ask them, what's wrong with you? That means what is the problem? Endanu kuഴപ്പം, right? Something is not working, we generally ask, what's the problem with that? That means endanu kuഴപ്പം, what is the problem? So what's wrong with that is how they have synonymously given that. What's wrong with Asian honeybees? Are they so different from Australian bees? Well, in fact, the Grant says, well, in fact, they look almost the same, but they are infested with mites, microscopic creatures which live on them and which can seriously damage our own homegrown bees or could even wipe them out. Okay, so now the problems are when he says, well, in fact, they look the same. That is, they look the same as in features, but they are infested with mites, right? Which are, what are mites? They have defined, it's microscopic creatures which live on them. Microscopic creatures are something which cannot be seen with the naked eye. They are very, very minute. They are very tiny, right? So they cannot be seen with your eye. So these mites live on these bees. That means when something is dependent on something other for a living, that is called as a parasite. Okay, normally what do we call a parasite? Parasites are living beings or something which is dependent on something else to live, have a life. Right? So that is generally called as a parasite. So they have defined it here, microscopic creatures, that means very minute creatures which live on them and which can seriously so those things, these things which live on these bees, which can seriously damage our own homegrown bees. That is what are the consequences, right, of that problem is they can damage the bees and even wipe them out. So that is something which is done by those mites. So what is the problem with, mainly the options which are given is, what is the problem with the bees? That they attack native bees, they carry parasites and they damage crops. So here we have attack native bees, it's not mentioned. That is something which is done by the mites, right, not by those bees. Now, what does the bees have the problem? They have an issue. That second, damage crops is not mentioned here. Attack native bees is not correct. That means the third B option, that is carry parasites, that is microscopic beings which live on them. When they live on them, they are dependent on them. That means they are actually carrying parasites. That is the mites. So that's why the answer for 22nd will be B, carry parasites. I hope that's clear. Okay. What point is made about Australian bees? Now, there is something specifically told about, maybe some feature, some characteristic or whatever that is, but it is mentioned. Something is made, some point is told about the Australian bees. Now, we were looking for the Asian honeybees till the first and the second question. The third question deal with Australian bees. Should be aware of that. So, we are looking for something about the Australian bees. The options given are, their honey varies in quality. Their size stops them from pollinating some flowers. They are sold to customers abroad. So, first thing is about the quality of their honey they produce. Then secondly, because of their size, or maybe they are, whatever the size is, it stops them, pollinating stops them. They are not able to pollinate some flowers. And then third one is they are sold to people who are different countries abroad, right? That means they are sold to them. So let's see what the script says. Okay. Well, what would happen if Australian bees died out? So what will happen if these Australian bees are dying away. Then Grant says, the honey from Australian bees is of excellent quality, right? Much better than the stuff the Asian bees produce. In fact, Australia exports native queen bees to a large number of countries because of this. When the European honeybee was first discovered out in the bush, we found they made really unpleasant honey, and they were also too big to pollinate many of our native flowers here in Australia. So here something which is given about the size to pollinate is when the European honeybees were first discovered out in the bush, we found they made really unpleasant honey and they were also too big to pollinate. This is about European honeybee. This is not about Australian honeybee. That means that option you can definitely cut off. Right, that is not going to be there. Many of our native flowers here. So what are the options which are remaining? Their honey varies in quality and they are sold to customers abroad. The size one is not for these bees, they are for another bee. So the honey varies in quality and they are sold to customers abroad. Now varies in quality means, variation means changes, right? Their honey keeps on changing in quality. They are sold to customers abroad. So let's see. We have got both of them mentioned in the audio. The honey from Australian bees is of excellent quality. Now here it is given that is extremely of good quality. And our option says that it varies in quality. That means it keeps on changing. Right? Then much better than the stuff. Here it's telling they are best. Now, in fact, Australia exports native queen bees to a large number of countries because of this. That means they export these bees. Now the question says, what are they telling about the bees? Right? What is the point that is made about the bees? Right? And that is not about the honey the bees produces. It is about what is the point about the bees. About the bees they are telling that Australia exports native queen bees to a large number of countries because of this. So when you are exporting something, that means you are sending the goods to outside countries, different countries abroad. That is exporting, right? So that is the word which defines selling out. Now, if you get confused between two of these options, because both of them are mentioned, even though it says varies in quality, varies means different from others also. So here you can see that the question says, what is the point made about Australian, specifically about Australian bees, not about the Australian bee honey, right? So it says they are sold to customers abroad. That is the thing which is mentioned about the Australian bees. Okay, so that completes that answer. Last one, 24th for the multiple choices. Grant Freeman says that if Asian honeybees got to Australia, now the next thing is he says that the first kind of bees which we discussed, Asian honeybees, if they got into Australia, what can happen? The country's economy would be affected. That's the first thing. They could be used in the study of allergies. Second thing. And the third one is certain areas of agriculture would benefit. So either the country's economy, keyword. They could be used in study of allergies. Okay. They could be utilized for study of allergies. Certain areas of agriculture could benefit. So these are three keywords which you can keep in mind when you listen to the audio. Let's see what happens if Asian honeybees gets into Australia. That must have had a devastating effect on the natural flora. Did you lose any species? No. Grant says, no. We managed to get them under control before that happened. But if Asian bees got in there, could be other consequences. That means what are the effects? What will happen if this Asian bees got into this country? We could lose a lot of money. Now, money. There's a word called money here. That means the country would lose a lot of money. Because you might not be aware, but it's estimated that native bees' pollination of flower and vegetable crops is worth $1.2 billion a year. So in a way, they are the farmer's friend. Oh, and other thing is, if you stung by an Asian honeybee, it can produce an allergic reaction in some people. So they are much more dangerous than native bees, right? So that is what now they are telling about allergic reactions, but not about they are using them for some allergy test. If anybody is stung by this bee, that means bitten by this bee, then that person will have an allergic reaction or whatever that is, right? So what will happen if they come in? First, in the beginning they have given the consequences is what? We could lose a lot of money. Now there is a word called money, right? And here when you go to the option so agriculture benefit, it is not mentioned, that is for sure. Study of allergy, that is also not correct because it has become allergic to others, that is also not. Anyways, the third option is there because there's a word called economy here. Economy deals with the revenue, right? A revenue generated or spent by a country. So that is what affects the economy of the country, right? So here there is a word called money in the option. That means we will lose, it will be affected. Okay, so we will lose a lot of money, that is mentioned. So that is affected. So that's why the option is option A for question 24. That is the correct answer. Okay, so that completes the multiple choice questions, right? Now going to the second set of questions, that is summary completion. Questions 25 to 30. Complete the summary below. The instruction says write one word only. Okay, that means every blank will have your answer of only one word for each blank. Now the title is looking for Asian honeybees. So the title of the summary is looking for Asian honeybees. Always take care of that because it will be mentioned in your audio, right? Let's read before going to the audio clip, definitely you're going to have a look at the summary so that you can mark some keywords, right? Birds called rainbow bee eaters eat only blank dash. So the some birds which are called as rainbow bee eaters, they eat only something specifically. Eat only something specific. Definitely it will be there because it's an eating thing, so definitely something for a noun will be there. And cough up small bits of skeleton and other products in a pellet. So we are looking for something which these bee eats. So let's see what does these birds called rainbow bee eaters eat. And we go to that audio script. We have read till this part. Now so how will you know if Asian bees have entered? Now we are looking, we had a title for that summary which said looking for Asian honeybees. That means we are on lookout for these bees. You're tracking these bees. So how will you know if Asian bees have entered Australia? How will you know whether they are there in your country? We are looking at the diet of the bird called the rainbow bee eater. So we are looking for this bird. Diet means what that bird eats. Diet is synonymous something. What is your diet? What do I eat? Right? So what we are looking at the diet of the bird called the rainbow bee eater. The bee eater doesn't care what it eats, right? Doesn't mind what it can eat anything, but we have been told that specifically something. Doesn't care what it eats as long as they are insects. So it can eat any kind of insect. Okay, it doesn't care what it eats. Apart from that, it doesn't eat anything. But if it's an insect, then it will eat any kind of insect. That means specifically it eats what? Insects, right? That means your answer for blank 25, I guess, yes, is insects. Okay, birds called rainbow bee eaters eat only insects, right? Then they have given the distractor information which they have given. But the interesting thing about this bird is that we are able to analyze exactly what it eats, and that's really helpful if you're looking for introduced insects. Okay, then they are telling how come, because they are telling it coughs it out, because insects have their skeletons outside their bodies. So the bee eaters digest the meat from the inside. Then they bring up all the indigestible bits of skeleton and of course the wings in the pellet, a small ball of waste material which they cough up. They have defined what it is. Pellet is actually a small ball of waste material. They just spit it off, right? They cough up. So that is the distractor which is mentioned in your audio piece. Distractors actually sometimes relievers because they help you to focus the audio very clearly after the distractors get over. So that completes 25 blank. Then Next blank for the summary is researchers go to the locations the bee eaters like to use. Researchers go to the locations the bee eaters like to use for. So these researchers are going to the location of these bee eaters like to use. Now whatever location these bee eaters like to use for their purposes, researchers go to that location for what? We will look at the audio script which says, how come? Because insects, okay, that we have discussed. That sounds a bit unpleasant. So how do you go about it? In the field, we track down the bee eaters and find their favorite feeding spots. You know, the places where the birds usually feed. It's here that we can find the pellets. We collect them and take them back to the laboratory to examine the contents. So they go there because there particularly they go to the location where the bees go because that is the location for their feeding. They go there to eat. The bees usually in that places they eat those insects. They feed on these insects, right? So when you go to the blank, you can see researchers go to a location the bee eaters like to use for what? The locations where the bee eaters go, they go for eating, feeding. So it is mentioned there, feeding. So you can write here for feeding. Okay, that completes your 26th blank. They collect the pellets, we read that part. They collect the pellets and take them to a dash for analysis. We saw there. Once the pellets are coughed out, they are taken where? They collect them up and take them to the laboratory. Okay, to examine the contents. So your answer for 27 is laboratory. Right, for analysis. Clear? Here comes the 28 blank. Here dash is used to take them. Here dash is used to soften them, and the researchers look for dash of Asian bees in the pellets. Now here dash is used to soften them. The pellets are taken to the laboratory and then they are telling here dash is used to soften them. What is used? Something which is used to make them soft. How do you do that? How do you examine the contents they are telling? The pellets are really hard, especially if they have been out in the sun for a few days. So first of all, we treat them by adding water to moisten them. Now there's a word called moisten which is similar to soften. We normally hear the moisturizer. Moisturizer is something which you apply, the skin becomes soft. So that is called softening. So what do? They take the pellet to laboratory and it is very hard, they are telling, to soften them, to make them very moist or soft. To make them softer, we add water. Okay, so water is what makes them soft. So you can go to that blank and sure write here water is used. You can be sure about the answer because specifically they say water is used to soften them, and researchers look for dash of Asian bees in the pellets. What do they look for in the pellets? What? In the pellets, what are they looking of the Asian bees which can help them? Then we pull them apart under the microscope. Everything's all scrunched up, but we are looking for what? We're looking for wings. So we just pull them all out and straighten them. Then we identify them to see if we can find any Asian bee wings. Specifically, they have told they're looking for wings, but then in the end, because the question says what is looked for the Asian bee, that means they're looking for the wings of the Asian bees, right? So your answer for 29 will be wings. Okay, wings of the Asian bees. The last one, the benefit of this research is that the result is more dash than searching for live Asian bees. When they do this kind of research, after that the result is more. So what is the benefit? That means called advantage. There's an advantage for this kind of research which is more than searching for live Asian bees. So instead of searching the live Asian bees, there's some benefit when they do it like this. And what is that benefit? We will look for it. And how many have you found? The professor asked. Grant says, so far our research shows that Asian bees have not entered Australia in any number. It's a good result and much more, it is a good result. That means the outcome is good from this research. Because of this research, they have found out there are no Asian bees still in Australia. The result is good, much more reliable than trying to find live ones as evidence of introduced insects. right? So this is more reliable. That means it is more trustworthy. It is kind of accurate. We can depend on it. More than trying to find out live bees in the whole of the country, right? Well, that's fascinating. So the word which will come here is, the benefit of the research is the result is more reliable, okay, than searching for Asian live bees. And by the end, it is ended with, well, that's fascinating. Thank you, Grant, for those insights. I hope that you might inspire some of our students here to conduct some similar experiments. Okay, so that is where the conversation and the section 3 ends, the audio clip ends, right? So we have discussed 10 questions. In the beginning, we took multiple choice 4 questions, and then we discussed the remaining 6 questions for summary completion. So I hope that it was clear and you won't have any doubts, right? Because not a difficult audio, and the questions were also not difficult. Even the synonyms were not that difficult to understand when you are listening to the audio. Fine. So that's where today's live session ends. We are going to connect next week again with another section and another different 10 questions. Okay. Till then, keep on practicing. Have a good day. Keep yourself safe. We'll meet next week. Goodbye.